A very good morning to you and welcome to Just Africa, where we spotlight bold ideas and transformative solutions shaping the continent's future. Today, we explore a critical frontier in Africa's development, innovative financing for green energy startups in Nigeria and across Africa. As climate change tightens its grip and fossil fuel reliance grows increasingly unsustainable, a new generation of African entrepreneurs are leading the charge into clean, renewable energy. But vision alone is not enough. So financing is the fuel that turns ideas into infrastructure. In today's edition, we will dive into how green startups are navigating financial barriers, leveraging creative funding and models, and building scalable, sustainable solutions tailored to Nigeria's unique energy challenges. And I'm not doing this by myself. Good morning to you, the most beautiful, swift Aderinto.
Priya, good morning. First of all, happy holidays. Did you get salami?
Yes, I ate a lot of it.
Oh, well,
I
had plenty.
No, sorry, I didn't.
Why? Because me, I have meat in the bag. That's what
Because I was busy resting and just sleeping to get back my strength for today's work.
So, Priya, it's like a privilege being on set with you. You're very intelligent. And like I tell people, you're very British. You're very, you don't beat around the bush, especially when it comes to information. And you do look good. I love the tie. I love the suit.
Thank you so much.
How many girls, I think a lot of girls are fainting. But let's get down to business.
Yes, please.
Fantastic introduction, by the way. And when you talk about green energy, the first thing we must talk about is the fact that Nigeria was the first country in Africa to actually start the green bond. And the green bond is when you can go to the bank and get financial help. The financial help is coming with the fact that they have already put in the intricacies of maybe if it fails, the business, like inverters and all that. So Nigeria was the first country for their banking system to start to give young entrepreneurs the green bond, which is very fantastic. Of course, we also have the ETF, which manages our transformation plan, because coming to safe energy, there has to be a plan. And so when we're looking at the safe energy plan, we are looking at solar systems, lighting, renewable energy, good energy, tech energy, clean energy. But there are a lot of bottlenecks involved.
Yes.
The first one I want to talk about, before we start, is Asu Rock talked about starting, inverters, putting up inverters about, I think, was it $10 billion? And Nigerians criticized it. For me, that's a problem. Because once Asu Rock starts to work with green energy, it means that all parastatals will start to work with green energy.
Or parastatals. But why doesn't it seem like, first of all, the reason why we want to harness the green energy is because, or want to take advantage of green energy, one of the bottleneck or one of the reasons that we are given is because of the climate requirement for us to create green, fossil fuel is moving, is getting out of the way.
Yes.
But the thing is, if we are going to do away with that, we leave our black gold beneath our feet. Intact without touching it. And that will not go well for us. And I remember as a result of this, President Muhammadu Buhari in the previous administration, when he attended United Nations General Assembly, he said that by 2060, Nigeria will become zero emission of gas, or of these things that makes the ozone layer deplete.
Yes.
So if we are going to do that, doesn't it look like 2060 is already at the corner?
It's not still far.
Yeah, no, it's not far. It's here already. Yes. Do you think we'll be able to meet up with that 2060? I doubt. And I don't think it's because the world is preaching green energy, we should run away from it. However, it's good to look at Nigerian startups that are taking advantage of it.
Yes. Fantastic. Yes.
Great. So we already have our guest and he's standing by. So we're going to break for a while. When we return, our guest will join us on the program, myself and Swift. We will be having a robust conversation with the guest. You don't want to miss that. Do stay with us. Welcome back. Many thanks for joining us on the program. It's Just Africa. And joining us today is a distinguished voice in the conversation, Dr. Mahmoud Ibrahim Mahmoud. He is an accomplished geospatial information technology specialist and environmental sustainability scientist specializing in satellite remote sensing and geographic information system applications. He immerses his science, technology, and art skills in the energy, climate, food, water, land, and nexus space. He is currently a senior climate change fellow working on methane mitigation and reduction in Nigeria's oil and gas sectors with the African Policy Research Institute. Dr. Mahmoud, you're welcome to Just Africa today. Many thanks for joining us.
Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity given to me.
It's good to have you today joining us, Dr. Mahmoud.
Good morning, Dr. Mahmoud. How are you doing? It's so nice to have you here.
Good morning. I'm pleased to be here with you this morning as well.
Now, let's get started, Dr. Mahmoud. Now, given your work with remote sensing and GIS technology, how can geospatial data enhance the planning and financing of green energy infrastructure in underserved or off-grid areas across Nigeria?
Oh, thank you so much for this very interesting question. You have actually taken me back home and on practices that I have been involved in for quite a while now. So, just like you mentioned, remote sensing, GIS or geospatial technology, as one might define it, they are data-driven solutions that allows for investment, mapping, tracking, and development. So there is actually that locational position where you can actually identify georeferenced investment. And one of such is the green energy that you have made mention of, which typically either wind, either solar, all these are geographically enabled, energies that can be tapped on the basis of the suitability of a location. So yes, these technologies will go a long way in precisely identifying areas that are very suitable, marginally suitable, or least suitable. And on that basis, that will inform investment particularly when you want to look at optimized investment before you invest a dime, a kobo, you want to know whether that location is suitable for that kind of investment. And this applies in the case of the green energy. Typically, say, for instance, you want to take green flare, you want to, take flare stacks or maybe gas to energy. You need the specific locations that are suitable for that. You want to site wind mines. You need specific locations that are suitable for that. You want solar energy intensity. You need suitable locations for that. So this is where geospatially or georeferenced and technologies can support green investment.
Brilliant. Well said. So I want to ask a question. What are the climate changes or the climate challenges when it comes to financing that you think has affected the growth of green energy in Nigeria, using it as a case study for Africa?
If I understand your question the way you have actually crafted it, it typically means that you are actually referring to locations and their vulnerability. So vulnerability of people and places to a kind of a particular investment. Now, in this case, typically in the Nigerian space, you know Nigeria has the abundance of green energy and its potential, and this is very, very significant when you want to put money to either solar, wind, or hydroelectric power, and then you want, participation from the public-private sectors, and so definitely you need to ensure that the locations are actually very suitable. But nature has its way of affecting the benefits that you want to draw from green energy. So you have a lot of climate variability that and changes that occur due to changes in art processes, due to human-induced activities such as land use, land cover change, and then due to greenhouse gases that we tend to kind of put into the atmosphere. And typically, CO2 and methane are typically top on the list of and how greenhouse gases tend to affect the ozone layer, and then we begin to have warmings, and then we begin to have some of these impacts that we look at. So in Nigeria already, you can see the frontline states are already beginning to experience some climate impacts, which is actually kind of cascading into some of the unrests that we have. And that on its own also tends to affect, affect investment because either for small scale farming, off-grid solutions, settlements and locations that are supposed to be benefiting from the lots and lots of potential from climate related energy are not able to because security concerns are there. And then that in a way also kind of cascade into the kind of investments that will go in because they are all kind of connected to one another.
Thank you, Dr. Mahmoud. Now, there's something that I want to discuss about. You made reference of the abundance of the climate, whether it's wind energy or other sources through which that the country or Nigeria as a space, as a location can use. But it looks as if green energy in itself is expensive, if not more expensive than what Nigeria has more abundantly when we talk about the crude oil that we have abundantly beneath our feet. When we talk about gas, Nigeria is gas abundant. The crude oil that we talk about in Nigeria is even less in quantity compared to the gas that we have in Nigeria, which can serve effectively for energy transition plan that the government is actually preparing for. So if we are to go by that, don't you think startups all running into the green energy sector is going to be quite expensive, and they may not be able to cover the geography of the people or the kind of people that should be able to access those goods in place of the normal conventional electricity that we use?
Well, and I think as part of the, thank you so much for that question. And really, when you typically want to look at startups, I think there is the foundational there is the foundational effort that needs to be put in place. This comes from government support. So it means that on one hand, there has to be strategic government policies and incentives. So you want to look at tax breaks, you want to look at feed-in tariffs, and then you want to look at regulatory support, which is kind of crucial for a conducive environment for green energy startups. And typically, you want to also see that you are engaging with the private sector where you want to kind of go through the venture capital, impact investing, and green bonds, which my colleague who is in the studio with you actually mentioned, which more like green bonds. This is very crucial capital and expertise that is needed to scale up energy incentives. But in addition, you want to look at there is actually the role of financing, and then there have to be financing mechanisms where you can look at options like more like crowdfunding, carbon finance, and public, private, and community partnerships, which can actually, bridge funding gaps and unlock opportunities for the green sector. And by that, the startups can benefit from it. But these are some inherent challenges that we have to deal with because if you want to address challenges such as the grid infrastructure limitations and policy consistency, you need collaboration, you need investors, you need also the buy-in of startups, which is essential for a sustained set of growth. These are outlooks that have to be looked at where you must come up with local and innovative climate financing models and technology adoption that can actually work. I want to give you a case in time, which is the Nigerian green flare. So there is actually a company already that is a green flare, Nigerian-led pilot that has looked at capturing associated gas that is being ordinarily flared, which is a wastage, but is now being used to generate compressed gas, and then a first of its kind, where you can actually use it for crypto mining and then some AI or machine learning and powering. So this is it's a cheaper source of energy if you look at it, because hungry energy solutions actually needs financing. But if you want to convert gas flare to energy, it's quite cheaper than some of those other available green energy sources that you want to look at. So in the base, the beginning, you need some finance. Capital is capital intensive, but along the line, you will see it begins to reduce. This is a typical example of what we see in Nigeria with regards to the solar panel issue, that at some point the federal government is already having a dual stand whether or not to ban importation, but then to focus on this amount of dollars that we are giving jobs outside for local people in Nigeria, and which startups is part of this statistic.
Doctor, thank you so much, because you talked about importation, and my next question actually runs towards that. Statistics shows that in Singapore, it takes 36 hours to clear a container. In Nigeria, you are looking at bottlenecks that may take you between 3 to 6 weeks, if you are lucky, or 3 months to clear a container. You talked about the importation of solar panel. One of the things that a lot of green energy startups complain about is the importation of solar panels takes so much time, and this leads to, of course, increased cost when you are looking at demurrage and all that. In your opinion, what do you think the government and people who are startups, especially facing towards green energy, can do so that they can be something, the transition can be easier for everybody and make it cheaper?
Oh, thank you so much for this question as well. You will see that port practice in Nigeria is really bad. And I must say that, first of all, they have multiple channels, whereas other countries are already adopting a single window payment channel to process all of these. If you look at the environment of the port, it's really not also conducive to be able to clear goods within, a kind of a limited amount of time. So you typically see that ease of doing business. The business enabling environment is already, stifled by multi window payment system, multi agencies involved, whereas all this can be made into a single window, and then from that practice, you have a well sanitized port. But from my own thought, I will think that there has to be a special vehicle or a special window for startups, where this will serve as an incentive to encourage businesses or small businesses that are within this space. I think that will go a long way. I want to encourage local financing efforts from maybe development finance institutions like the central bank to look at this issue. More like isolated, and to create a special window that will support startups in this regard.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mahmoud. Now, my next question goes this way. Now, it looks as if a brief conversation that the government has had with the Chinese, they've talked about establishing electric vehicle manufacturing plant here in Nigeria. And recently, if we take our direction to the 360,000 barrels of Aliko Dangote refinery established in the Lekki Deep Seaport area, we could start talking about propylene, which is one of the byproducts. And that specific product has a very significant place in the Nigerian economy, in that it almost serves all essences in diverse or ranges of industry. talk in the car industry, plastic production, talking about manufacturing, furniture, and others, including syringes in the health sector, or if we're talking about infrastructure in building roads. Its use of that propylene is diverse, but it looks like we do not have factories available in the country, and including the alternative power source, the renewable energy, the importation of which you spoke about with my colleague. I don't think we have factories in the country that is ready to manufacture this, even though we have some of the raw materials that could come as a way of byproducts from the oil refining. So what do you think the government should put in place? How can startups be encouraged to establish such factories, though it's capital intensive, so that we can cover that gap and we can completely bar out the foreign importation of these products into our country?
Well, thank you so much for this question as well. I want to start as an entry point into this conversation by looking at what we have in terms of our TVET, technical and vocational education and training issues. We have a lot of skill gaps. And incidentally, we're not doing, I mean, the government is making efforts to see how there is a revival of the TVET kind of scheme where you don't necessarily need an advanced degree, but you need a technical and vocational education training, which usually is a way to go. Because if you go to Australia, if you go to Germany, if you go to all of these advanced countries, you see handy men and women have an entry point to contribute significantly into the economy. Now, this skill gap has to be addressed on one hand before you want to like do a ban like Nigeria is looking at. And just like you said, there are still a lot of policy issues that needs to be addressed because rather than encouraging importation, don't forget that there is a China-America conversation on tariffs. There is currently, I mean, U.S. president and Elon Musk conversation around electric vehicle issues. I mean, policy issues are still very lagging, and Nigeria needs to address this. So it's good to copy, but we should not just blindly copy and paste. We need to know how to copy and then how to paste in an appropriate manner. So policy issues needs to be addressed. You have a lot of, government institutions like NASENI, like SON, like all of these institutions needs to be strengthened to be able to get the quality that we deserve in terms of whether creating is a kind of limits of importation, but then in country to begin to encourage investments that would kind of support this initiative in a way. So Nigeria don't needs to really start looking at knowing fully well that we have resources to make batteries or to support battery production. Then those production lines need to be urgently developed and then plugged into the TVET scheme. And then while we look into a 2-3 year or 5-year plan where we are trying to locally develop around this, that is when a proper conversation around ban can come. But otherwise, we just want to ban, and then we don't have what with the local capacity to really, address this gap in terms of both the resources, the manpower, the skill, the financing. So I think that there's need for some structure around a plan, a strategic plan, how Nigeria can address this issue. Otherwise, I think we will still be joking around some of the things we do. And typically, we are used to fire brigade approach, but I don't think fire brigade approach is the way to go. We need to actually sit down to plan properly around this.
Okay, talking about the fire brigade approach, I liked what you said. I want to ask a question, and this is very personal to me. In your opinion, do you think that the Nigeria green energy is being sabotaged by our European counterparts? Talking about, like, data shows that about 35 billion dollars has been put into the African economy to boost green energy. If there was any continent in the world that this amount was put into, and by now we wouldn't be talking about the fact that we don't have factories, there's importation crisis. By now all this would be working smoothly. Every day we are seeing Europeans, you know, people from China, Tanzania, everywhere coming into Nigeria to handle factories and ensure that there's importation. So my question for you, sir, since you deal in data, do you think that the Nigerian Green Energy Institute is being sabotaged so that our small business enterprise don't pick up the way they are supposed to, you know, pick up?
Thank you so much for this question. You see, um, data is the next oil of the coming horizon. But typically, we are not where it seems Nigeria is averse to data. I give you an instance. If you ask Nigeria that, do we know exactly how much oil that is being extracted from the wellhead in Nigeria? These are topics. Do we know how much gas? Before, like, I mean, I have worked and I'm on leave right now, and that's why I'm just happy to speak about this. That before the National Oil Spill Detection and Response Agency developed the Nigerian gas flare tracker, that brings in transparency around how much gas is being flared. There's no data really in the open space that is able to show us how much of flaring is going on. And then you don't forget that when data becomes in the open space, you will have, CSOs, you will have researchers that will be able to uptake this data, carry out researches, create models that will look at some data-driven options and exit plan around the current challenge that we have. So it's absurd to see that planning in Nigeria is done without credible data. And then those who even try to invest in data collection, you will typically see that they are not typically Nigerian organizations, because other people who come into Nigeria, first of all, will start from the fundamentals. So you have a baseline, and then they continue collecting consistent data. It is on that basis they will now be able to create models. So if you ask, there is a lot of data gaps, data concerns. And when you don't have data to be able to project either in the short term, in the medium term, or long term, I think this will create some of these fire brigade approach that I mentioned. Or when you take decisions, you will see that you have to continue changing or making reversal. So I think whether or not, before an external party can come and start mutilating or disturbing your plans, your projection, there is also an internal complicity. So within Nigeria, there are people who are aiding and abetting whatever you want to kind of allege or assume or think that there is the external influence that is playing on this. So I mean, be it as it may, if the external parties is about business, it's about interest. So if they keep doing or playing all of these kind of games with us internally, Nigeria also needs to have some credible and standardized efforts that speaks to data, that is data driven, to be able to know or understand some of these international politics, geopolitics that is playing around whether or not and should we allow Africa to play on this. Because a typical case in time is the Dangote refinery, the largest single train on earth. But you see, I mean, consistently, I mean, the Dangote group with their dedication, with their commitment, with continuous financing, they had a business intelligence data that allowed them to look at the horizon, and they were committed and dedicated to ensuring that this refinery came to life. And if you look at the impact of this refinery across Europe and across the world, you will see that without credible data to be able to frame your decision and your resilience around something you believe in, then you will also one will also be playing ball to whatever externalities in economics, as economists usually say. Externalities will always be there. You can't do away with that. But internally, you must also make a preparation, and your preparations has to be built on data and to be able to carry on your agenda properly.
Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Mahmoud. Now, please don't go, stay on the line. We will go on a break. But whilst we're on break, Dr. Mahmoud, I want to give you something to chew on so that by the time we return from the break, our conversation will start from that place. Now, there are some data or some facilities and amenities that are available in the urban areas that sustains development, transformation in economy, business, and development. Now, we want to see how we can use this information as a GIS specialist, how we can translate or recreate this data in rural areas so that both the rural area and the urban area can have the same facilities that made them operate and make them operate in same optimum of efficiency in business economy. By the time we are back from this break, that is the direction that our conversation would go. It's still Just Africa, live on Souk News Television, and we are reaching you live from our studios in the commercial city of Lagos. We'll be back in a moment. Do stay with us. Welcome back. Many thanks for joining us on the program. It's Just Africa. We've been having conversation with Dr. Mahmoud Ibrahim. Mahmoud is a GIS specialist, and we are talking about using green energy. How startups can take advantage of green energy to bring about development and establish their businesses in the continent of Africa, but specifically in Nigeria. Welcome back again, Dr. Mahmoud. Many thanks for joining us this morning on the program.
Thank you.
Welcome. Now, let's go to urban. Let's say we are moving from rural to urban transformation or rural-urban transformation. Why is Lagos the way it is? Why is Abuja the way it is? What kind of data you think is available in Lagos that made Lagos look developed so much so that any startup will be thinking of coming to Lagos to start their business because of the availability of the market and the army of consumers? Those data you think is available here, if we replicate them somewhere in Ikotekpene or somewhere in one village in Delta State or in Kano State, is it going to have the face of Lagos? Is it going to have what attracts people to Lagos? Can we replicate that in those places? And how can we do that?
Oh, yeah. Thank you for taking me home, too. And more like I am an urbanist in a way, because part of my PhD thesis tried to integrate geoinformation and socioeconomic data to actually look at the impact of urban land use vulnerability to potential climate change impacts in Abuja. So I agree with you 1,000% over 100% that yes, we can leverage urban data with GIS and remote sensing for kind of rural development in Nigeria, which typically you have cited a kind of example that looks like, why is Lagos the way it is? But there are a lot of factors that have made Lagos the way it is. And that comes with planning. Don't forget that there are aspects of Lagos that had undergone planning. Abuja, too, had experienced a master planning. So there are many states in Nigeria that don't have a master plan. They don't have a regional plan. And you see, I think it's been told that, I mean, the moment you fail to plan, you have planned to actually fail. So yes, we can explore urban-rural linkages using some data-driven rural revitalization, which means that what we see in the urban fabric or in the urban landscape, I mean, covering infrastructure, population dynamics, market flow, service access, and environmental footprint. All these can provide valuable reference framework for guiding rural development. So, and GIS as a tool that allows for this kind of spatial analysis can support in this regard, because this can be translated into spatial strategies that will allow you to map markets and linkages and trade corridors for agricultural products, for instance. You can kind of identify underserved rural clusters based on urban-rural disparities and service delivery. You might also want to look at support location allocation modeling for healthcare, education, and clean water systems. So in the end, one will be able to optimize land use and resource allocation, where you can kind of have a proper understanding to detect urban sprawl. You can also guide sustainable land allocation, but you can also integrate some climate risk layers where you can look at flood, drought, and resilient settlement planning to it. You can actually use some of these kind of data to look at infrastructure replication and service modeling, where you can kind of use urban data on road networks, energy grids, and waste management systems to model and scale development in rural areas and ensure that adoption is achieved. Remote sensing can typically allow you to look at topography and terrain suitability for road expansion, mini grid, solar infrastructure, telecoms, and so on and so forth. So eventually, you will be able to kind of have a rural-urban economic flow and value chain. You can design agro-logistics hub near rural settlement. You can support cold chain infrastructure planning. I mean, you can also use some seasonal labor and income flows to be able to address some issues around inclusive growth and policy development. One can use this to kind of monitor and evaluate rural development projects, where you can monitor progress of rural electrification and basic services. You can detect informal settlements and land use change over time. And this can be used to support accountability and evidence-based targets, where both federal and state governments can kind of allocate funds to properly look at what are the issues, and based on these issues, their social contracts with the people can be well optimized. So as for societal benefits, using existing urban data to kind of project planning for the rural development, sectors such as agriculture, housing and infrastructure, public health, education and services and governance can benefit from this data. And this is just a kind of a tips of the iceberg of what the GIS and remote sensing technology can bring into as benefits to in terms of urban data to improve our rural development and agenda in Nigeria.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Mahmoud. Now, Dr. Mahmoud, I would have loved to continue this conversation endlessly with you, because I think you're making lots of sense, but we have to go. However, I would like to have you here on screen again. Subsequently, we are going to have this program, because I think our conversation is not done yet, because we're talking about data and development, its developmental effect in Nigeria and other parts of Africa. Hopefully, you will join us again next time as we continue this conversation.
Thank you so much. I think I will also be delighted to have another conversation with you, which typically will speak around the data economy, and then also looking forward to a final report that will be finally launched, which has to do with the methane mitigation and reduction project. I'll be happy to kind of have a conversation with you around this. So thank you so much.
Yes, we'll be glad to have you too. It's been a pleasant moment with you. Thank you so much.
Have a great day, sir.
Yeah. So a lot of the questions around data and development,
yes,
like I was saying earlier when we were on break, it's not the first person that has said that the new crude
It's data.
is data. A lot of analysts and experts have been saying that word. And I wonder if crude is black and it's called black gold, what could be the color of data?
It's like tech. It's
Yes.
air, but people are making trillions of dollars from it.
Exactly.
Some of the top 10 richest men in the world are into tech.
Yes.
So.
Well, this is where we draw the curtain on the program. It's been a fantastic moment here on the show, Just Africa with Swift Aderinto. My name is Oyinpreye Krumale. Many thanks for watching. Now, Swift.
I want to tell you to please ensure you follow us, you like, and please drop your comments at Souk News Television on all our social media platforms. It's very, very important.